Recently, everybody's been talking about a cost of living crisis, especially here in Australia. And before the election, every second video I saw was, oh, the supermarkets are so greedy, they're causing the cost of living crisis, and so on. But Coles and Woolworths only make 2% profit on everything that they sell. And we call them greedy. It's a pretty slim margin. Now, what if I were to tell you there's an entity that's out there, and without even doing anything to facilitate the transaction, they take 20%. You'd rightly call that entity greedy. You'd look me in the eye and tell me, no such thing is happening, there's no way we would let such a greedy entity exist that comes in and takes 20%. But we do. And we let them do it right in front of us. And this entity is the government. And it starts off with something that is quite egregious when you think about it, which is GST. Now, GST is 10% on most goods and services. So let's have a hypothetical bag of chips worth $10. The GST on that is going to be 91 cents, which means straight away the government is making 91 cents on this bag of chips, and Coles or Woolworths or whichever company you decide to shop at, they are making 20 cents. So already in one transaction, the government is making more than Coles or Woolworths or whichever entity you want to buy from. Now there's a whole bunch of other taxes that are much more hidden than GST. GST is just a very nice, easy one because they slap it right there for us to see. But when we add in the other ones, you'll start to see where this extra 10% comes from. The fuel excise tax. Now, the trucking companies, they do get some of this tax back. However, they are still paying some of it. And then, because it's a cost that gets added into the cost of the item, so this bag of chips, that's $10, part of that cost is the tax paid on fuel. That then gets brought back into that GST calculation and is paid again. Granted, it's going to be a very small amount of that, but that is something that got taxed twice. Now, when you add the fuel excise into that, it ends up being about 25 cents of this $10 bag of chips is fuel tax. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that is already more than what the supermarket earns from this bag of chips. So just in that one tax, the supermarket and the government make a similar amount of money on one tax for selling a bag of chips. And the government had nothing to do with the transaction at this point in time. Now, there's other taxes like land taxes and council rates and other local taxes. All of that adds up to 15 cents probably, or roughly about that, depending on how you count it. Now, those are ones between just land taxes, council taxes, the fuel excise, and GST. Those are taxes that we could just get rid of straight away, and it would reduce the cost of this theoretical bag of chips, and it wouldn't harm the government budget. Now, when we start getting into other taxes that will worm their way into this that we don't think about, we have payroll tax. Now, payroll tax ends up being about 15% of the hidden tax that you pay when you buy this hypothetical $10 bag of chips, which means 15 cents is going into paying the government to have the privilege to have an employee stock the shelf. Then you pay for it, not the company, since they're going to factor that in to their prices. So you're paying another extra 15 cents for this payroll tax, and then you have to pay an extra 10 cents for the income tax that the employee has to pay, because that again is factored in to the cost of the products for the staff's wages twice. One through payroll tax and one through income tax. Because remember, both of these taxes are going to be factored in to the cost of the product at the end. Now, we also have corporate tax at the end of this. And you might be going, oh, the corporation needs to be able to pay taxes, they need to pay their fair share. But think about it. You're the corporation. You get to decide how much money something is worth. Within reason. If the government is going to tax you at 30%, you're going to raise your prices by an amount of money so that you will make the same amount of money at the end of the day. let's say you mow lawns, and you could charge $50 an hour, but the government is going to take $15 from you. So this is what you do. You still want to earn $50 an hour, so you raise your prices to $65. Now, after the government takes their cut, you still have the same amount of money you were willing to work for at the end. But the customer had to pay an extra $15. They ended up paying that tax. It wasn't you, it was the customer. Now let's bring this back to a supermarket. Granted, it's not going to be as simple. In some places, the supermarket's going to lose a little bit of money on the taxes, and in other places, it's probably going to make a little bit of money on taxes. But overall, the supermarket's going to push the cost of taxes onto you, the consumer. Because all the tax is a business expense that it has to pay. And the way it resolves business expenses is by passing it on to the customer. So, now that we've gone through and we've talked about all the little taxes that have snuck their way into our bag of chips, let's add it all up. Your 90 cents for the GST, 60 cents for corporate tax. Payroll tax is at 15 cents, 25 cents for the fuel excise tax. Land taxes and council rates are at 15 cents. Income tax and an influence are about 10 cents, which means the total tax paid on a $10 bag of chips is $2.16. The supermarket makes 20 cents at the end of the day on that bag of chips. How can we look at someone who with a straight face tells us that the supermarkets are greedy when they are part of an entity that takes 10 times that amount of money from your pocket? I just want to let that sink in. The government makes, on every transaction, 10 times as much as a supermarket. And we call the supermarket greedy. But now let's bring this all back to the cost of living crisis that I mentioned at the start. Now we've just had a new government come in, and the big thing on everybody's mind is a reduction to the cost of living crisis. Now, one thing that they could do, and instantly drop the prices of everything, and they could do it in a week. They could probably do it in an afternoon. Just get rid of GST. GST only accounts for about 11% of Australia's tax income, so you can more than easily live without it. And they're going to be spending extra money anyway, so the extra money that they would be printing is going to happen anyway, so we might as well have everything be 10% cheaper. Because in a couple of years, things are probably going to be 10% more expensive anyway. So we might as well drop that price while we can. Dropping the fuel excise tax, probably going to make things cheaper as well. Or if they just cut it completely from that of trucking companies, so just anybody with an ABN, no fuel excise tax. The other taxes that I mentioned, they're going to be more difficult to get rid of. Now, in terms of bang for buck, getting rid of income tax is probably going to be the best thing to do. Get rid of income tax, suddenly everyone is 30% richer. Or things drop in price because companies don't have to pay 30% of people's wages. Either way, people's livelihoods either get better or they stay the same. But either way, there's less money going to the government, and corporations don't have to spend as much on wages, which should mean lower prices. You could also get rid of corporate tax, but I feel people are too jealous of the rich to get rid of corporate tax. Oh no, the companies need to pay the tax. It's fair enough. Eventually, they'll see that all that a corporate tax is a tax on consumers. Let's take a look at the average Australian. The average Australian earns roughly $95,000 before tax. Their income tax is $20,000 a year. Then there's the Medicare levy, which is $1,900 a year. Now when we add in the hidden taxes, which GST is not really hidden, but that's one of them, that's around $4,000. Then we have the fuel excise tax, which is $600. Registration, insurance, council rates, stamp duty, the passed on corporate taxes, that all adds up to roughly $10,000 a year, which is 32% tax rate. A third of your money goes transfer it to the government. So the government takes 32% of your income in taxes, roughly. What do you get for it? You get roads and hospitals and all of that. But none of that stuff would cease to exist if it weren't for the government, because it all existed before the government. So, does the government provide a good enough job to warrant taking 32% of your earnings? And then, of that roughly $10,000 in hidden taxes that the government takes, would it not be better to keep roughly $4,000 of that for yourself to make cost of living better? Because let's think about what the Labour government has done recently. They were paying everybody who pays electricity bills a couple $100 every month, or every 2 months, to reduce the cost of living. Why not? Instead of printing money to then give back to people that they can only spend on the electricity bill, why not stop taking extra money from people? Just reduce taxes. Get rid of GST. Problem solved. Anyway, if you found this at all insightful or entertaining, please like and subscribe. If you think I'm a complete idiot and want to rebut me, please do so. I'll quote my sources in the description. Thank you and good night.